വീണ്ടും കാണുന്നതുവരെ നിങ്ങളുടെ സോളമൻ മാത്യു.
To Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Okeechobee, Florida. I'm Jeff White. This is edition NWS 584 for release on Sunday, May 3rd, 2020. On Wavescan today, The Greenland Story, the good ship Morrissey and its Arctic voyages. We'll go back to the High Frequency Coordination Conference in Malaysia and our Japan DX report. The longest continuous series of expeditions to the Arctic was conducted aboard the fishing schooner that was registered under the name of a girl who was born in Canada in the year 1877. This small, though quite famous ship was in use for a total of 20 annual expeditions into Arctica, beginning in 1926. It's now a registered National Historic Landmark in the United States. And it is the official state ship for the American state of Massachusetts. Ray Robinson now comes back to the beginning.
Thanks, Jeff. William Ed Morrissey was born in Lower East Pimlico in Nova Scotia, Canada on August 17, 1845. In 1867, the 22-year-old Edward Morrissey married the 16-year-old Caroline Larkin, and in the course of time they gave birth to 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. The second youngest child was a girl, and
Greenland Story, the good ship Morrissey and its Arctic voyages. We'll go back to the High Frequency Coordination Conference in Malaysia and our Japan DX report. The longest continuous series of expeditions to the Arctic was conducted aboard the fishing schooner, registered under the name of a girl who was born in Canada in the year 1877. The quite famous ship was in use for a total of 20 annual expeditions into Arctica, beginning in 1926. It's now a registered National Historic Landmark in the United States. And it is the official state ship for the American state of Massachusetts. Ray Robinson now. Back to the beginning.
Thanks, Jeff. William Morrissey was born in Lower East Pimlico in Nova Scotia, Canada on August 17, 1845. In 1867, the 22-year-old Edward Morrissey married the 16-year-old Caroline Morrison. In the course of time, they gave birth to 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. The second oldest child was a girl, and she was named Effie Maud Morrissey. Location in the world. His first northerly expedition was financed and led by author and publisher George Putnam, who subsequently married the well-known, though tragic, aviatrix Amelia Earhart 5 years later. This northern expedition into Greenland was made on behalf of the American Museum of Natural History in New York City and the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor in Michigan. There were 2 major purposes for this expedition: collecting specimens of Arctic sea life and establishing plans for subsequent expeditions to the same areas. During the 20 years that the FEM Morrissey conveyed annual expeditions to the Arctic, more than a dozen of these voyages were specifically to various areas of Greenland itself. All of these expeditions were funded by the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and by similar institutions associated with geography, exploration, museum collections, and natural sciences. During the 1933 expedition to northwest Greenland, the Morrissey ship was temporarily impounded by the British while it was traversing Canadian waters without proper papers. This legal infringement was corrected when the ship returned to the waters of New York City at the end of that summer voyage. On half a dozen other occasions, the Morrissey ship voyaged into northern Canadian territories, along the northern seacoast of Labrador, and in particular to the 2 large islands called Baffin and Ellesmere. During the latter part of World War II, the Morrissey was taken over by the American authorities, and it was used under charter to convey needed supplies to American forces on duty at Frobisher Bay on Baffin Island and at nearby Ungava on the northern Quebec coast. Upon every occasion during its 20 years of service in the Arctic, radio was in use aboard the FEM Morrissey for operational communications, for the transmission of news to supporting newspapers in the United States, for the relay of live broadcasts to the medium wave networks in the United States, and for amateur radio QSL communications worldwide. Due to international radio regulations, 2 radio operators were aboard the Morrissey on each expedition. The first radio operator was Edward B. Manley, who operated the equipment aboard the Morrissey for 10 years, from the very first northern expedition in 1926 up until during the year 1935. During the 1926 summer expedition, Manley sent regular dispatches to the New York Times under the ship's original call sign VOQ. Then during the following year, Radio Broadcast magazine in October 1927 printed a picture showing the ship's shortwave radio equipment. 6 years later, a 1933 QSL card shows the use of a modified call sign, now VOQH. The main transmitter was a 250-watt Morse code unit, and the receiver was a Hamilton Comet Pro from New York. 3 years later again, in August 1936, a QSL card shows the official call sign aboard the Morrissey in North Beacon XDA, and the equipment was a 100-watt radiophone transmitter together with a new Hamilton receiver, the Crystal Pro. In 1941, the Morrissey was in use for another northern expedition, this time on behalf of NBS, the National Bureau of Standards. NBS operates the International Standard Chronohertz station WWV, and at that time a new shortwave station was under construction at Beltsville, Maryland, just a few miles northeast of Washington, D.C. On this expedition, 3 personnel represented NBS, including the rather well-known northern explorer Louise Boyd. The radio operator, Mr. T.A. Carroll, was seconded from the United States Coast Guard. This voyage took the Morrissey north through Baffin Bay, the expansive water between Greenland and its western islands, and several of Canada's far northeastern islands. During this voyage, local magnetic levels were noted, together with associated shortwave monitoring observations. While located along the northern coast of Baffin Island, a very large black sunspot was noted, and this resultant emanation from the sun caused a sensational manifestation of the Aurora Borealis northern lights, and also a total radio blackout that lasted for 4 weeks. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Ray Robinson of KVOH in Los Angeles. Recently on Wavescan, Jerry Plummer of WWCR and I were discussing the opening day of the HFCC A20 Shortwave Frequency Coordination Conference in Malaysia. We were talking about reception reports from listeners. Today we continue that conversation.
Now, do you ever get ones that are frequencies that are not yours?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's and something, and it's in particular for this program for Wavescan. They may hear something about WRMI or KVOH or whatever, and they'll send us a report. It'll be like a transmission from KSDA in Guam.
Yeah, right.
Or something like that. You know.
Because I do mention the different stations and stuff.
And AWR, of course, buys relay time for many of their transmissions on different sites around the world.
Yeah.
And this program, Wavescan, goes out on some of those sites.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's not a frequency, but I'll bet it was heard from one of the AWR leased outfits or any of them, because we're not, certainly not hesitant about mentioning the names of the stations that it goes out on. I'm sorry, I just wondered if you run into that. You know?
Yeah. It's, sometimes, I guess. I mean, I remember back to the days when you and I were wanted the QSL cars.
They were nice.
Yeah. It's the world is different now, you know.
And you still like them. These guys that send them in.
Oh, and then of course you get the reports from people who don't even hear it on an SDR. They just hear it on line. Only when a QSL car.
Yeah, and you think that's tough, man. It's because a lot of us are out there on very different, many types of internet-related stuff. Because there's so many different ways now than there used to be. But it's still okay. I mean, they're still listening to us, and that's the important thing, right? Yeah, it is, man. It is.
We also, it might be worth mentioning that a lot of people listen to Wavescan on the podcast.
Oh, they do.
Which are put on the AWR website every week.
That's yet another place. Think about it, Wavescan is really on a lot of different mediums, if you will. The shortwave, I mean, like even IRRS,
from Italy,
which actually sometimes is Romania.
That's right.
That comes from,
So you're never quite sure sometimes where these programs are coming from. And I'm sure that's confusing for listeners, particularly beginning.
I've also one of those lines, and I'll quit beating on it, but I've noticed getting QSL reports from younger guys who are just starting to get into the shortwave. Have you noticed some of that too?
Yeah. They say that shortwave is a dying medium, and that only old people listen. But a lot of young kids are still beginning listeners.
We got one this last week from a guy who was 19, and sent in a MP3 recording of us, and he said that he just got the radio that day, and said he was so excited that he got his car and drove to his grandfather's house and turned it on just so his grandfather could hear, he heard it. And so I'd like to see some young guys coming in and learning about that,
Another thing we get a lot of is people who say that they've just come across an old radio.
Oh, absolutely,
I'm talking about some really old radios back from the 30s, 40s,
the tube things,
And they'll say, I just found this thing, I just turned it on,
I've been tuning across the band. You're the first station I've heard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of those radios been setting up for 30, 40, 50 years, you know. And they said, I heard these sounds coming out of it, and then you identified yourself, and I'm just literally flabbergasted that I'm hearing something like that. So it's, for a dying breed, we still got our moments, I guess.
And there are a lot of people who used to be shortwave listeners who, for one reason or another, got out of the I won't say hobby, but activity or whatever for many years, and then all of a sudden they discover it again, and now they're awakening. Second wave.
I get some of those like that too, but I guess it's because of the advent of, you know, the less expensive. You know, these sampler shortwaves now are really technologically pretty good.
Yeah.
You know? Well, I mean, that $7 one she's got, picking up all kinds of things, and didn't you, a couple of years ago, when you were in maybe Kenya or somewhere, that you said that you could find all kinds of radios? Nigeria, yeah. Mm-hmm. You said there was all kinds of radios.
You're getting it like $3.
Yeah. Well, the one I'm using, I paid more for shipping than I paid for but he still works pretty good, yeah.
You know, here in Malaysia, I got one of these smartwatches. For the first time I'm using it, and I'm just wondering how long it's going to be until these smartwatches can pick up shortwave.
That's good. You got a good point. Technology is advancing at a very, very rapid pace, and you know, when you and I were growing up back in the 1800s, they called them Dick Tracy watches. You remember? Yeah. And that one of yours looks like a Dick Tracy watch.
It does. Yeah. And apparently you can connect it to your phone and phone calls and things. I'm not sophisticated enough to figure that out, but you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid and I saw he had that two-way radio on his. I thought, this is amazing, you know. And now here you were in one in Malaysia, you know.
Now if I could just pick up WRMI on it. But it won't be very long, I'm sure.
No, they're really making and you know, over here, of course, where we are is sort of a maybe not the hotbed of technological creativity, but it's certainly a hotbed of technological manufacturing, because there is just tons of stuff over here that's you know. And I'm going tomorrow to look at some of these lesser lights, because I bet you can find shortwave radios here too. You know,
I'll bet you can.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Well, sorry to veer off so much.
Well, it's interesting though. And so, but anyway, this is only the first day of the conference. We'll record this. 5 more days to go.
Right.
But we're off to a good start.
Yeah, we are. And one of the things that we've been able to do for the first time in KL, I guess over the last 4 or 5 times we've been here over the years, sort of as a token of appreciation to the smaller group that showed up. We're going to dinner this time around. So we're going to be able to provide a dinner for them. That's good.
We're at a hotel called the Melia, which is a Spanish chain from Spain.
It is, yeah.
And there's a Spanish restaurant here.
In Malaysia.
In Malaysia. And the head of food and beverage here is from Spain.
Yeah.
Actually from the Canary Islands.
Right.
And
you were conversing with him today in Spanish.
Yeah. So he's putting together a dinner for us upstairs at the Spanish restaurant for Wednesday night.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a good thing for the hardcores that made it. You know, it's sort of a way to kind of thank them a little bit just for making it out.
Exactly, and I guess and it's all sort of made possible by a sponsorship grant from Continental Electronics.
It really is.
Which is I guess the only company left in the U.S. and one of the few in the world that still makes high-powered shortwave transmitters.
Well, they just made one about a year ago, a 500 kilowatt.
Talked about it, up at WBCQ.
Monticello, yeah. And thanks to a sponsorship of them, we were able to add a little bit to it and be able to have a dinner for everybody this time. That's sort of a show of appreciation. they were here. But yeah, it's a Spanish place in Malaysia. But you were conversing with him quite fluently.
Yeah. He's from the Canary Islands, and it's part of Spain, but they speak different style of Spanish there. It's more like the Latin American Spanish.
Yeah, which you was able to understand pretty clearly, yeah.
He's a nice guy anyway, and so we're looking forward to the Spanish paella and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to work out well. And again, I guess you could say, given everything that's happened at this conference, it was a successful first day.
I think so.
I think we did okay. And we're looking forward to bringing more of these wave scans with you. You know, during the week, our full intent is to report on what we're doing each time while we're here.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right, thanks a lot. I'll see you later, Jeff.
I was speaking there with Joy Plummer, the frequency manager for WWCR shortwave in Tennessee and for the Caribbean Beacon in Anguilla. We'll have more from the HFCC A20 conference in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, next week. In a recent edition of Radio World, Hans Johnson has an interesting item about Russia returning to DRM on shortwave. He says Russia has resumed digital Radio Mondiale broadcasts on shortwave. The country originally aired the Voice of Russia via DRM a few years ago. The new service is tentatively called Radio Purga, or Radio Blizzard. The target area is the Chukotka region of the Russian Far East. Analog shortwave transmissions once served the area, but those ended in the early 2000s when the broadcaster left analog shortwave. Chukotka is vast, and the target audience only numbers a few thousand. Thus, shortwave is used to broadcast Voice of Russia's analog programming and is now being used for the DRM program. The new service is a joint project between the government in Chukotka and the Far Eastern Regional Center of the Russian Television and Radio Broadcasting Network. Using DRM for Radio Purga has several advantages over analog shortwave. Radio Purga over DRM, for example, offers a static-free and higher fidelity signal. Studies have shown that DRM is just as reliable as analog shortwave over this distance via signal transmission. The broadcaster is considering transmitting 2 audio programs from a single DRM transmitter. This is something analog shortwave can't do. It's also planning on using DRM's ability to transmit short text message or type of RSS feed called journaling. DRM transmissions use also only a quarter of the power analog transmissions do. We have in these remote places 2,000 residents who need to be provided with communication services. Northern Sea Route also requires attention, said Roman Kopin, the governor of Chukotka, last spring when the project was initiated, according to a Russian press report. In addition to mariners on the Northern Sea Route, the audience includes geologists, miners, reindeer herders, and hunters. Thanks to Hans Johnson at Radio World for that item. Let's go now to Tokyo. Here's Yukiko Tsuji with her DX News for this month.
Hello and welcome to the DX Report of the Month from Japan Shortwave Club, edited by Toshi Otake, and I'm Yukiko Tsuji. We have several DX reports from our club members this week. Voice of Indonesia, Palangkaraya, was heard on 335 kHz on March 27th from 2015 to 2021 UTC French. SIO rating was 333. Talk and music programs were on the air. VOA via Udon Thani, Thailand, was heard on 9350 kHz on April 5th from 1140 to the sign-off at 1200 UTC. SIO rating was 353. Slow-speed English program was broadcast. Bible voice broadcasting via Dushanbe, Kazakhstan, was received on 11550 kHz on April 3rd from the sign-on at 1300 to the sign-off at 1315 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. Pray the Lord program was on the air. BBC via Oman was heard on 7205 kHz on April 6th at 2158 with interval signal to the sign-off at 2300 UTC in 4. World News was aired at 2200, followed by Newsroom at 2206, News at 2230, and the World Business Report at 2232. NHK World Radio Japan via AWR UAE was heard on 11830 kHz on April 3rd, from the sign-on at 1400 to the sign-off at 1430 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. NHK Newsline was broadcast, followed by Easy Japanese at 1415. The Voice of Turkey was received on 9875 kHz on April 2nd, from 2045 to the sign-off at 2125 UTC in English. SIO rating was 343. Local pop music and the promotion announcements were aired. Interval signal was played at 2118. Radio Romania International was heard on 15130 kHz on March 31st, from 1130 to the sign-off at 1150 UTC in English. SIO rating was 352. Local pop music and the DX mailbag were on the air. Vatican Radio was heard on 7360 kHz on April 10th, from 1864 to 1910 UTC. SIO rating was 252. Special broadcast for Easter, Way of the Cross, sermons in Latin and their English translation were broadcast. Follow the Bible Ministries via Ascension was received on 11660 kHz on April 5th, from the sign-on at 1900 to the sign-off at 1929 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. Bible study was aired. ID was given at 1926. Finally, Japan Showtime Club will issue the QSL cards for the correct reports on our segment of the Wavescan program. We are issuing QSL cards by email to the report sent by email. Our address for your email report is jswcqsl@live.jp. I repeat, jswcqsl@live.jp. We continue to issue the printed QSL card by the same system as before. Your report should be addressed to JSWC PO Box 44, Kamakura, which is KAMAKURA, postal code 248-8691, Japan. $1 ILC or $2 for return postage will be appreciated. For this edition of DX Report, we would like to thank Mr. Yoshiaki Hayashi, Mr. Iwao Nagatani, Mr. Takashi Morishita, and Mr. Chiaki Shimada for sharing the information with us. Thank you for listening, and please join us for our next edition of DX Report of Japan Showtime. I'm Yukiko Tsuji in Tokyo.
Thank you, Yukiko. In recent weeks, we've been bringing you some of the music from Cambodia that we brought back from a recent trip there. This is very interesting music played on the 9-gong gamelan. And with this gamelan music, we end this edition of Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Adrian Peterson. Next week, the beginning of a regular radio broadcasting service in Vanuatu. More from the HFCC in Malaysia and our Philippine DX report. Several QSL cards are available for Wavescan. Send your AWR and KSBA reception reports for the program to the AWR address in Bangkok and also to the station your radio is tuned to. WRMI or WWCR, KVOH or Voice of Hope Africa, IRRS Federal, or the AWR relay stations that carry Wavescan. And remember, you can send a reception report to the DX reporters when their segment is on the air. Here in the program, they will also verify with their own colorful QSL card. Return postage and an address label are always appreciated. The email address for AWR QSLs is qsl@awr.org. And the postal address for AWR QSLs is Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 234, Prakadong, that's Prakang, Bangkok 10110, Thailand. Again, that's Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 234, Prakadong, Bangkok 10110, Thailand. The email address for other correspondence to Wavescan other than reception reports is wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Okeechobee, Florida. Till next week, good listening, everyone.
Address for AWR QSL is Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 234, Prakadong, that's Prakang, Bangkok 10110, Thailand. Again, that's Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 234, Prakadong, Bangkok 10110, Thailand. The email address for other correspondence to Wavescan other than reception reports is wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Okeechobee, Florida. Till next week, good listening, everyone.